So we're going live. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come chat with me.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, coming back on again, second time, which is always nice.
hmm
As we were just
Yeah,
saying, obviously, a little while ago that you was on, I'm wondering what's changed, what's gone on. It'll be
hmm
interesting to run the comparisons back.
for sure. I'm curious too. You just shared with me that we talked like what, 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm a little curious to listen back to that interview and see where I was and how much has changed since then. It'll be interesting.
So you went to
It was.
just wondering, just start by talking about what went on there, what happened there, obviously, was an injury, stuff like that, just to see kind of what went on essentially.
For sure. So yeah, I was supposed to fight on June 22nd. In my opinion, it was the biggest opportunity of my career so far. My first main event. It was, a number one contender fight in Combate Global at atom weight. So huge fight. I was really looking forward to the opportunity. I don't want to get, too detailed about the injury, but about a few weeks before the fight, I got a pretty bad injury. It was actually the morning of my birthday. I will not forget that. It was the morning of my birthday. Um, but after the injury, I had every intention of continuing to move forward with the fight. So I didn't really tell anyone. My coaches were aware, but my plan was to, just take a little bit of time off, like maybe a week to strengthen it, give it a chance to heal a little bit, and then kind of come back the last 2 or week and a half of camp and try to finish out strong. But when I came back to finish camp, the injury had gotten worse. I, I couldn't even I like couldn't even last through specific positions in grappling and in MMA that are very important. I had no strength at all in those positions, and it was extremely painful. To the point where, like, even when I was going in slow motion, it was just exhilarating pain. So yeah, it was a really, really difficult choice. I think that for the first time in my career, I made the smart choice rather than just kind of doing what I normally do, which is toughening out, and just pushing through it. So I do think that there's something to be learned from that. Like I can take a little bit of positivity from it just because I feel like I'm growing. I'm growing as a fighter. I'm growing as a person, trying to be smarter rather than always trying to prove that I'm tough and that I can, kind of handle whatever comes my way. So now that it's what, about 6 weeks or so after, I'm healthy now, actually. I'm completely healthy. I'm cleared to train. I'm cleared to fight. So I'm in talks with Combate, hoping to get something booked ASAP. And I would like the same fight. So we'll see. I'm hoping to be able to announce that soon.
I think because of obviously the magnitude of the fight and your opponent, do you think that played a part there? Maybe you made that decision not to kind of toughen it out because whereas previous fights you might have been like, well, I'm going up and I need to do what needs to be done. Whereas like because it was a massive fight for you, that may have you want to go in there and perform to your best. You might not get that opportunity again, so you want to be
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, I think that part of it is just my maturity as an athlete and fighter. I've made a lot of silly decisions in fighting. Like, I'm the kind of person where my opponent misses weight by 6 pounds, I'm still gonna fight. Like, my opponent misses weight by 10 pounds, like whatever. I've fought under some crazy circumstances, and to be honest, it didn't really pay off for me, pushing through things like that. When it came to making a decision this time, like I said, I think my maturity as a fighter um, played a big part, but also I think the my opponent's style did play a little bit of a part. She's aggressive and she's quite grappling heavy, and like it was in those specific grappling positions where I had absolutely no strength. So yeah, the opponent did play a part a little bit. I have a lot of respect for Claire. I think she's a really skilled fighter, and I feel like she would agree that she would want to fight me at 100%. I think that we both respect each other and know what we bring to the table. So I want to fight that girl at 100%. I didn't want to fight her at 75%, and if I lost, kind of having the injury as an excuse as to why I couldn't perform. I want to be my best and truly put our skills to the test. Who's the better fighter?
Yeah, I mean, a smart decision, right? Obviously, you want to, you don't, you want to, if when you win 100%, lose
Hmm.
100%, you know that you've given it your all and you were fully capable on the night. And I think that's an extremely important thing because that way, at least you're fully in control of the outcome and it's not an injury or something that kind of
For
hinders you
sure.
slightly. So
I
I
don't
think
I
it's
don't
great.
want I don't want people to get it wrong. Like I don't think any fighter goes into a fight 100% healthy. It's very common for fighters to go into fights with small nagging injuries, infections, sickness. It's very, very common. So I don't want people to think like, oh, she didn't fight just because like her leg hurt a little bit. Like, no, I was incapable of um, maximizing certain positions, or if I got taken down, I wasn't able to use my strength in order to get up or even create space. So, um, those situations in those specific positions played a huge part in my decision.
Touching on obviously the grappling side of things, obviously, which is massively in MMA. How did you how did you find the transition from
Hmm.
boxing to MMA? The majority is like kind of obviously stand up, and now you're having to do grappling and things.
Yeah, the transition was really, really hard. To be honest, it wasn't even, I don't even think being new to grappling was the hardest part. I think the hardest part for me was the kickboxing. I think people underestimate the difference between striking and boxing and striking and MMA. So it was really, really challenging for me to learn how to manage distance. Like in boxing, you're right in front of each other. In MMA, you're about half a foot further. So, um, and I considered myself a very technical boxer. So coming into MMA and having to learn how to manage distance, um, it was a really, really hard transition for me. If you look back to like my first 5 MMA fights, you'll notice that I kind of just like moved forward and threw hands really hard and just kind of hope it landed. Um, and that was sort of my boxing style. Like I had a very sort of Mexican style, like hands up, come forward, and just be tougher than the person in front of you. Um, but as I grew as a fighter and got more experience in MMA, which took a lot of time, it took me probably like 3 years, 4 years to be able to manage distance well and land my jab. And then it took more time to be able to land my right hand, and then adding on to those things. So I've been learning on the job since day one. Um, yeah, I've been learning on the job, and it's cool to see how far I've come for sure.
I find that because I've always wondered this basically is like because you maybe practiced in a skill set for such a long time that when
Hmm.
things become a little bit sticky, that's where we like revert back to almost.
Hmm. Do I feel like I do that? Revert back to
Yeah, yeah,
my
yeah. So
um that's a good question. I think like A lot of people don't realize I only boxed for 2 years. I boxed for 2 years as an amateur before switching to MMA, so I didn't have a ton of experience, I was pretty new. Um, I do think that boxing is very much my foundation and my base. I wouldn't say that I necessarily revert back, but I do think that I've found ways to kind of use my boxing to set up my kicks and set up my takedowns in a way that is uh, beneficial to my style. So I do still very much feel like boxing is my foundation, and I've just learned to build off that skill.
What are some like other obstacles you've had to overcome, obviously on your sort of journey from just Stephen to, it could be outside, could be training wise, just a few of them. If you want to go into that, that's up to you. Go in as deep as you want to go.
For sure. The entire thing has been an obstacle. I mean, I moved to South Florida 7 years ago with like a few $100s and no MMA experience. And, I came here alone to begin training at the best gym in the world. So that in itself, like I'm sure you can imagine how challenging that was. Um, I think that some of the biggest struggles that a lot of fighters don't really talk about uh, is finances and making a living and being in the gym as much as possible while still being able to pay your bills and feed yourself and be able to afford supplements and like a massage every now and then. So yeah, I mean, I by the grace of God, because honestly, there's no other way I could have survived out here in South Florida. It's expensive down here. There's just
Imagine.
no way. There's no way I could have survived out here for this long without the grace of God. So I think that for 7 years I've done odd jobs and I've worked as a server. I've babysat kids, dogs, office job, like anything that I could do that didn't interfere with my training time, I would do it. And I still do. I still do today. So that is probably one of the biggest challenges that I've had is, finding ways to make money, finding places to live for cheap rent, finding help and support. But on top of that, man, how about like starting off my pro career with a record of 1-2? That was an obstacle. I was very embarrassed because here, like after my amateur career, I was considered a pretty hot prospect, and representing a gym like American Top Team, people expect a lot out of you. So when I started my career off on such a wrong foot, I was embarrassed, and it definitely made me question myself, my abilities, um, whether I even wanted to do this anymore, whether it was worth it. Um, and I was able to kind of build myself back up from that a little bit. But even a couple years later, like I had a 500 record. There was a time where I got knocked out. I was dominating a fight and I got clipped with a punch and got put to sleep. Man, there there's so many obstacles involved in this sport. Um, like I would say that I dealt with imposter syndrome, feeling like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't belong here. I don't belong with these superstars. I'm a loser. I think being lonely, dealing with being lonely in this sport. People say fighting is like one of the loneliest sports in the world. So yeah, all these things put together are all obstacles that I have overcome and continue to overcome.
Where
That
do
was a
you
lot.
think? Yeah, no, that's right. I'm digesting it and then kind of
Yeah,
looking
there's a
at
lot.
avenues. Um, where do you think like that embarrassment came from? Like, 'cause obviously you said about the record and embarrassment, and like, I think maybe an element of that imposter syndrome as well could be, they
Hmm.
can kind of come hand in hand sometimes, because you're like embarrassed and you feel like you shouldn't be where you are and
Hmm.
who you're with because you feel embarrassed. So I feel like they're quite linked. So I was just like wondering where that came from. Was it like from yourself because of your own expectations, or external?
I think a little bit of everything, especially in the beginning of my career. Like I wasn't, uh, I didn't pay a ton of attention to my mental health, and um, so I really needed that external validation and the attention that I was receiving by kind of being this upcoming prospect. It felt good, and I don't know. I think my own expectations as well. Like when I moved out here, I must have, I don't know if I was like crazy, but I truly believed that I was going to go 4-0, get right into the UFC, and kind of like ride off into the sunset. So, when I started off on such a rough foot, I'm like, really? This isn't how it's supposed to go. But yeah, I was embarrassed for a lot of reasons. I was embarrassed, for myself. Like I felt shame, and um, I was embarrassed to walk into the gym, coaches, teammates. I was embarrassed because of my family. Um, I don't come from like a fight family. My family really has like no idea about the fight world. So when I started fighting, I had to do a lot of convincing to kind of get them on board, and for them to see like the benefits that this sport gives me. But when I started to lose and struggle, it was hard for me to to continue to convince my family that this is what I was supposed to be doing. Um, so yeah, just a lot of confusion and a lot of wondering, like, is this what I'm meant to do? Should I push forward, or should I be looking for something else?
Sounds like a lot of pressure as well that you seem to put on yourself. Just noticing kind of like all of those people and yourself and kind of all
Mm,
these, it's like a lot of pressure to take in there, if that makes sense. I know
for
you've
sure.
got even more pressure, like to just go and deliver, and then you're putting this pressure on
Hmm.
yourself. It's quite mad. Like I don't think I'd be able to deal with it personally.
I think a lot of the struggle, especially in the beginning of my career, came from, like I said, I kind of dealt with imposter syndrome. It was really, really hard for me to be surrounded by so many amazing athletes and really successful people. Like, you know, the people that I was surrounded, like they didn't seem like they were struggling, right? They had money. They were all pretty much already in the UFC, like had reached a high level of success. And being around people like that, you can either allow it to inspire you, or you can get caught like comparing yourself and trying to measure yourself up to them. And in the beginning, I think I did a lot of that. I was struggling so much, really in every aspect, like basically living out of my car, going from job to job, and coming to the gym with two black eyes. Um, and although it was a huge inspiration being around all these athletes, I think that your mindset matters, right? And in the beginning, I didn't have the right mindset. So I really let that, it caused me to put more pressure on myself. Like you have to succeed. You want to be where they are, So it didn't help though. Putting that extra pressure on myself didn't help.
What like motivate you to and inspired you to like keep going? Because
Mhm.
a lot of people during those moments, let's be honest, could quit. They could just be like,
Yeah,
I'll go do this instead.
yeah. I think especially when I was like 1 and 2 or 3 and 3, it became a very personal goal. Um, I honestly think that quitting in that moment would have been easier, right? Like it's kind of easier to walk away and to quit and to just go do something else. Um, I very easily could have went and got a 9 to 5 and um, had a secure home and got some money and just lived my life in South Florida. But it became a very personal journey and a personal goal um, to dig deep and find out what I'm made of. Because I always knew I had the ability, right? Like I believe in my skills, I believe in my abilities, but it's different than like actually getting the job done, you know? Um, yeah, I would say just the journey became personal. I wanted to prove to myself that I could pick myself up and I could keep going forward.
How's like MMA helped your mental health and like well-being? Because obviously those are some skills that are kind of teaching you to dig in and keep on going. But how has it all kind of like came together to really bolster you mentally?
It's a great question. Wow. I mean, martial arts in general, I think is a huge benefit to mental health. In martial arts, like there's no lying, right? There's no lying. It's a direct reflection of self and the way you carry yourself, the way you live your life. Um, you there's no room for ego. You have to be able to find balance. Um, so it's helped me tremendously to find discipline in my life. When I was younger, I really lacked discipline and accountability. So martial arts, uh, it helped me to take accountability for myself, for my life, for the decisions I was making. Um, like for example, when I was struggling in my career, when I was 1 and 2, you can blame yourself and you can make changes on yourself, or you can blame everyone else. You can blame the circumstances. So if you want to succeed in this sport, even if you're not fighting, even if you're just a martial artist, if you want to have success, um, you have to be able to push your ego to the side and hold yourself accountable. So that has helped me tremendously. Um, I think being a fight, it's also like just calmed me down. Martial arts is you have to be mindful, right? You have to be present. And um, I've always struggled with like focusing and being present. So it's like I'm meditating every day on the mat. Um, yeah, it's helped me tremendously. It helps me to control my emotions. Um, it helps me even to like put a name to emotions so I can fix it, right? Like if you're not able to, if you're frustrated in training and you're not able to put a name to that emotion or find out what it is, then you're going to have a hard time um, improving it, right? So, man, yeah, it's helped me tremendously in every aspect. I personally think that the more mentally healthy you are, the better fighter you'll be. I think people think that, great fighters fight out of anger, but a lot of professional fighters will tell you that you need to have a strong sense of who you are. You need to have a clear mind and you have to be able to focus on the task at hand completely. And the way you live your life is a reflection of the way you fight. So, yeah. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, no, yeah, I liked it. I was indulging in the answer. I was also thinking about what you said with like these athletes that are good. If you look at like John Jones, for example, he seems very calm, relaxed. He seems like he knows his skill set very well, but he also seems very present.
Hmm.
And I think that, like what you said with martial arts and MMA, it's like it does teach you to be present, and there is that like meditative element where you can, if your brain's somewhere else and you're training whether it be
Mhm.
punching, kicking, rolling around on the ground. If you are somewhere else, you're gonna lose, get hurt. So you do have to have that focus, I guess, in that moment.
Absolutely. Even like sports performance coaches will they often say, when it comes to a fight or training, your focus should be winning, I think it's 6 seconds or 10 seconds at a time. 10 seconds at a time. So if you make a mistake, you can't be thinking back to that mistake. What should I have done different? Oh, I messed up. Oh, I suck. Like you very much have to be in the present to be able to focus.
Yeah, I mean, I started jiu-jitsu a little while ago, and I found that it's like massively helped
Mm,
my mental well-being to kind of just be anywhere really. Like I can
yeah.
kind of I've learned that skill now to be in the moment, whether it be
Mhm.
sitting on my decking in the garden or whatever, and not trying to think
Yeah.
of tomorrow or the next day or the next day. It's good to have a plan and
Yeah.
execute that plan, but if you've written out that plan and you know, for example, like a training camp, you know what Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday is. When you're on
Mhm.
Tuesday, you don't need to be going, oh, Wednesday, I need to do X, Y, and Z. Like it's already planned, it's there. Let's just enjoy Tuesday.
Absolutely. I mean, this is like a never-ending skill that you have to implement, right? Like, I don't want people to think that, "Oh, I struggled with this, but now like I'm good. I figured it out." Like, nah, it's an everyday thing. Um, just the other day, like I almost freaked out and had a meltdown because I was uh I was like overwhelmed with everything I have to do. And sometimes it takes a reminder, from good people around you or from yourself to be in the moment. Like right now, I'm focusing on this podcast. I'm not worried about what I have to do after this or what I have to do tomorrow. It literally says in the Bible, you have enough worries today. Worry about today. Tomorrow, you will have different worries. So it's biblical, man. Worry about today. Be in the moment.
How good are your social circle with knowing you and understanding you and kind of either holding you accountable or kind of, for example, if you're like, going to do X, Y, and Z,
Yeah, man, I've been blessed with some good people around me. My family is they're like my best friends, huge support system, and although they don't really understand the fight world, um, they understand me and they support me. And um, actually, like when I pulled out of that fight, or right before I pulled out of the fight, I called my mom, and she knew the exact things to say, right? Like I was like bawling when I called her, like, "Mom, I have to pull out of the fight. I don't want to, but I have to." And um, she just reminded me that like, good, good for you for listening to yourself and taking care of your health and your body first. The opportunities will come, if just because God says not right now doesn't mean never. So my family is huge, huge support system, and I would say my wild ones, my three best friends, Kayla, Michelle, and Isabella. They're amazing. My teammates, amazing. Um, yeah, it is so important to have good people around you who want the best for you and people who love you no matter what, right? Because although fighting is a big part of what I do and who I am, I have so many more elements to me, so it's important to have people around you that remind you of that as well.
if you weren't fighting competing, what would you do instead?
Well, I am currently getting my master's in counseling. Um, so if I never started fighting, I probably would have gotten my master's a long time ago. I would maybe even be in a doctoral program. My goal after fighting is I want to combine my two passions. I want to help at-risk youth through the use of martial arts. So creating some kind of community program or a program that I can put in schools or something like that, um, to help inner city kids, um, connect and gain skills through martial arts. So that's my future goal. Um, I guess if I never would have started fighting, then that would look quite different. Like I would probably be in the field of counseling, but certainly not anything to do with martial arts. So, um, yeah, I'm glad for this experience. And I think that, when I do retire from fighting, I still think that martial arts will be a big part of my life moving forward.
What are your future plans for within your fighting career at the moment? What's the aim and the end goal
Good question. So I have a new contract with Combate. My goal is to be their first atom weight champion. I would love to. Sometimes Combate has crossover fights with Ryzen, so I would love the opportunity to fight for the Ryzen belt as well. I think that would be incredible. And after that, we'll see. We'll see. The goal is to get 4 wins in Combate, become the champ, and that'll put my record at 10-4, and then we'll see what's up from there.
How important do you think it is to have like quality training partners when you're sparring?
Mm.
To like from what you've learned in your career, how
Yeah,
important is that? Do you want it like always the top level of people that you can, or do you mix it up?
that's a good question. Quality training partners is everything, really. Um, I do like what you said though about like, is it good to just have like the top of the top? In my opinion, I think you need a little bit of everything. I think you need rounds that push you and basically where you're getting your butt kicked. I think that you need rounds where the level is very even and competitive. And I think you need rounds where you're dominating someone a little bit and able to practice new skills. So I think that having different level of partners is the most beneficial. To be honest, I don't really have that experience. Training at ATT, like even now that I've been there 7 years and have become one of, the more experienced MMA fighters on the mat, every single round is hard. Even if I'm beating people or dominating someone, like everybody's tough, everybody's coming to scrap, everybody's extremely, highly skilled. So yeah, being at a place like ATT it's tough for sure. There's no easy rounds.
I can imagine that it's probably quite a difficult um, place to be. They've got a lot of great athletes there, a lot of great coaches as well. What's your like traditional training week look like off of like if there is no fight coming up? What's your training like, and then sort of the difference between the two when you have got obviously a competitive fight coming up?
Good question. To be honest, it doesn't look that different. um, which is something that I'm going to try to get better at. To be honest, I think that's one of the reasons that I got injured. Um, I don't I don't really have balance. Like I said, I came here 7 years ago, and I've pretty much been training 2 times a day, every single day for 7 years. Um, I only kind of had one mode, and now that I'm a little bit more experienced and I'm not young, I'm getting older, and I need to, learn to train smarter rather than harder. So typically it was always kind of the same. I always trained twice a day, every single day, no matter if I had a fight or not. Now it's a little bit different. But I would say like the main difference is just sparring. When I'm out of camp, I'll maybe spar once a week. When I'm in camp, I'm sparring twice a week, every single week. Um, Also, like, so I would say out of camp is less sparring, more drilling, more lifting, kind of trying to bulk up and get strong. When I'm in camp, it's definitely more sparring, more conditioning, and more fight specific work. So the drilling sessions are, not necessarily learning new skills, but kind of, making skills better and going over, specific techniques necessary for the fight.
So obviously, like there, you're explaining how, as you've developed, you're kind of thinking about changing it up and a little bit easier outside of camp and a little bit more tougher when you're in camp.
Yeah.
What other advice would you give to like your younger self that you've learned through this whole experience? It can be again anything you want, even just life in general, but overall,
Mm.
you know.
It's a really good question. Oh gosh, what would I tell my younger self? I was quite a knucklehead. I really was. I was quite a knucklehead. I'd probably tell myself to get my act together, find something that you're passionate about and start working on yourself. I remember like when I was young and growing up, something that I vividly remember about myself is that I hated being alone. I hated being alone and I hated being bored. So I was always out, even if I was like hanging out with people I didn't really like, I had to be out doing something with people, partying. Um, I've changed so much since then. I'm kind of like the opposite now, to be honest, but I think that if I would have worked on that a little bit sooner, it would have been more beneficial, spend some time with yourself, work on yourself, improve yourself, pour into yourself, learn skills. Um, I often call myself like a late bloomer, because it wasn't until I was like 26, 27 where I started to kind of learn like, oh, okay, like I'm an adult. Like I need to be accountable. I need to take charge of my life and truly create the life that I want rather than just kind of like allow life to happen to me and play victim mode. Um, so yeah, I would say just like spend time with yourself, get to know yourself.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing. I mean, touching on the being adult thing, I feel like an old man at my age, but I was speaking to my mum the other day, and I said just randomly, I was like, I don't even think we become adults. I just think we become older children. Like we,
100%.
if you talk to other people, they're just like even my mum at moments, I'll like say, I need some advice on this, and she'll give me good
Mhm.
advice. But then certain things happen in her life as well, and I'm like, you're just an older child. That's all you are. But I don't know why we use this what like term adult. Do you know what I mean? Like we're meant to be. It feels like robotic sometimes. I suppose I prefer just like I'm an older
No,
child. I
you're
suppose.
so right. You really are so right. Like it sounds cliche, but age really is just a number. Like I truly think we're all walking around just trying to figure it out, trying to find joy, trying to find purpose, trying to find community. So yeah, you're right. It doesn't really change as you get older. You just kind of become more aware um, of things that you like and things that you don't like.
It's the responsibility element, right? As we get older, we're like, oh, actually, I've got to do all of
Yeah,
this. Great.
that's a hard part for sure.
So, did you do anything sort of spiritual slash like meditation, chakras, anything like that for yourself in your own time to help kind of zen yourself down a bit?
So I'm a Christian. I think that, having a relationship with God is it's one of the biggest reasons that I'm able to, I'd say it's the biggest reason that I've been able to um, have mental health, have good mental health. It's given me purpose and a sense of self and a sense of direction in life. Um, I read my Bible every morning, and do a devotional and try to pray, consistently throughout the day. And I go to church on Sundays, and um, I have friends who are also in the faith where we can try to hold each other accountable or bring up hard topics to kind of digest. But aside from that, I would say I do meditate, especially when I'm in camp. I try to meditate daily, and I also journal. So those are three things that I would say really kind of help to keep me grounded, and focused on kind of bringing the best self that I can each day. Because I'm a monster when I wake up. Like I am. I wake up and I'm a monster. Like I need to ground myself. I need to put myself in the right headspace before going and like fighting my friends, you know?
Is that like your so when you wake up in the morning? Most times, is that where you sort of practice those, where it might be journaling or meditating?
100%. Yep. Every morning. I got it right there. Oh, you can't see
Can't
my
see.
background. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, every morning I wake up, I make coffee, and I do my Bible study. I write, and then I go to the gym. Yeah, every single morning.
The last question I'll fire your way is just how do you deal with negativity from other people, comments on Instagram and stuff like that? Do you deal with it well, or does it make you mad and you're like, I'm going to prove these fuckers right or wrong or whatever? Do you know what I mean?
How do I deal with it? I mean, to be honest, I don't I feel like I'm not popular enough to like actually get hate comments and stuff. People are usually pretty nice on Instagram. Um, but just negativity in general, because there's always going to be negativity, right? Um, I think that I don't know. I think that having a strong sense of self is what negates that negativity. As you get older, you kind of realize that, wow, like none of this really matters. I try to look at the bigger picture, and um, kind of focus on the people that focus on me, right? Like the people that pour into me, the people who I love, and the people who love me. Like those are the opinions that matter. Um, if a stranger says something bad about me, it's like, can I really take that to heart? I mean, they don't know who I am as a person. Um, so that opinion really holds no weight. I think it's easier said than done. If I had like a million hate comments under a picture, I'd probably I'd probably have a different answer. But um, yeah, I think it's important to be able to block out that noise and just remember who you are.
Good advice, I think. Solid advice.
I'm prepared.
Hmm. So, Kayla, if people want to find you, where can they contact you, check out your stuff? Where's like a good place, the best place for that?
You guys can find me on Instagram at KayRockMMA. I'm also on like Twitter, I guess, and Facebook, but Instagram is where it's at.
Yeah. All right, cool. No, I appreciate your time. I'll chat to you off stream, off camera for a
Okay,
second, anyways. But no, I really appreciate you. I can't get my words out. I really appreciate you coming on and
for
taking the
sure.
time to
I
chat with me.
absolutely I appreciate it as well.